Speaking of combos, that brings me to my next point. Now, usually at this point, people try to knock the crap out of me, but I know for a fact that this happens to be true. And not just because a couple of other games set a precedent for the concept. Even the original Street Fighter wasn't built from the ground up with proper combos in mind, let alone the first version of the sequel. The most that the developers thought would happen was that people would go for consecutive jabs or land clean, solid hits. When people started to push the game to its limits, they discovered combinations of attacks that looked crazy but were powerful, and thus the popular version of the combo was born. After the first game, Capcom saw what had happened and refined the game with Street Fighter 2 Dash. And, well, you guys know what happened from there. The self-proclaimed hardcore fans are usually the first to claim that Capcom had all of this planned from the start, and that these combos were secretly hidden, in order to reward those that were worthy of playing the game the way that it was meant to be played. Interestingly enough, Capcom hasn't said yay or nay on the issue since they've got better things to deal with, like counting their huge piles of cash. It's worth noting that this is one of the few times in recent history that an unintentionally powerful concept, which was discovered by players, was embraced so openly by the original developers. It's sort of like what Capcom vs SNK 2 fans were hoping for Capcom to do with role cancelling, except that their version of gameplay could be summed up as who rolls last, rolls best. But there are a few games which had combo systems before Street Fighter 2, such as Shanghai Kid, developed by Nihon Game and published by Taiho in 1985, who bogarted all the credit for the game. In Shanghai Kid, occasionally the word rush will flash on the screen when the opponent was prone, allowing the player to button mash for a short time. It wasn't exactly the most precise method of fighting, but if what I've seen from the fallout of various fighting game tournaments are any indication, it's the first move a newcomer makes in any game in the genre. Apparently, slamming on the cabinet panel is extremely natural. Maybe the judge in Capcom v Data East and the California 1994 copyright should have taken a stroll to the boardwalk before he made his decision. On a side note, Nihon Game eventually changed their name to Culture Brain, and went on to make the licensed fighter OS Karate Bu, as well as the Hiryu no Ken series, brought over to the States as Flying Dragon for the Nintendo 64 installment. Furthermore, the original name of Shanghai Kid was Hokuwa Syorin Hiryu no Ken, which would make it the first installment in the series. Another game that featured combo-heavy gameplay was Street Smart, an odd boss rush game created by SNK in 1989. I say odd because it's really like a string of brawler boss fights. You fight one enemy at a time, but they're all much stronger than you are. The controls consisted of 3 buttons, 2 for punching and kicking and 1 for jumping. Moves were executed by holding a direction and pressing either punch or kick, and combos were performed by executing moves in quick succession. However, every move pushed you forward, so spacing was a major issue. These games are textbook examples of how combos worked before 1991. They were usually flawed and unwieldy, and their importance varied from game to game. In fact, most fighting games in the 80s and the early 90s were wonky in one way or another. The only ones that I could even tolerate playing were some fighting RPGs, and I couldn't even read them since most of them weren't localized. So, although Street Fighter 2 didn't start these concepts, it pretty much standardized them. Although Street Fighter 2 wasn't the first fighting game ever made, it created the template for modern fighters of today. Not because it was so great that it created an industry-wide revolution or anything, but because almost everyone else was either too lazy or unsure to figure out something original on their own. So, in a way, it could be said that the Street Fighter 2 series set the standard, but that's really only as far as it goes. And considering that it was the people who played Street Fighter 2 that acted as the catalyst for its numerous upgrades, I could just as easily say that it's the fans that set the standard for the entire genre. It would definitely explain why only games that favor rushdown seem to do well. But it's just guessing at this point, and like everything else I've said so far, it's just an opinion. While I've still got your ears, I think I should clear up some issues that have come with my methods along the way. People ask me these questions all the time, so I figure I might as well answer them while I've got a chance. For starters, my definition of a fighting game is a game that features duels of some sort between at least two people using various martial arts. That is, the focus is on the characters that were selected at the start of the match. With that said, I also examine each game on a game-by-game basis. So, even if a good game doesn't match up perfectly with my idea of a fighting game, I'll still give it a once-over. Also, as you can probably tell, I usually just wing it when it comes to synopses, rather than following any set formula or plan. But that's an intentional choice. I don't want to come off as some sort of know-it-all snob who decided to grab a mic and start slapping arbitrary ratings on a bunch of hack games just for the sake of being different. I just want to stir the collective pot and get people to start looking around for less popular games. That's all I've got to say, really. And now that my affairs are in order, I can get back to work. I still intend to do these weekly. It's just that between researching the games, fact-checking, playing the games, writing the synopses, and editing the videos, well, it's a bit much for a weekly schedule. So I may need to use filler. Topical filler. Ugh. But hopefully this won't end too badly. If I were willing to split up episodes into seasons, I would say that this is the start of Season 3. But I don't, so I can't. And I also can't just use opening and ending themes, although that would be pretty neat. But what I can do to celebrate this new worth ethic is to pick a new avatar. And that's exactly what I intend to do. So come on, let's go!
What's happened more this winter? Spice happened more century. I'm gonna blow that door.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe, catch a tiger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny.
No, I think not.